Hello and welcome to the show. I'm Martin Willis, your host, and excited to have another Thursday night show here. I have James Iandoli on tonight. I listened to him on another podcast, and he has quite a story. And so we're going to be talking with him in just a minute. Just a few things here. Next week on Tuesday, it might be myself, Jack, UFO Jack, who helps me out with YouTube and all that, Peter Robbins, possibly another guest. We're going to be talking about the Exeter UFO incident. Fascinating case, if you've ever looked into that. So I'm going to be talking about that. I'm going to be speaking at the conference the following Sunday after that. And as I mentioned before, we're going to be out in Sedona. And well, before that, we're going to be up at Shag Harbor. I'm going to be the MC there again this year, up at Shag Harbor in Nova Scotia. And that's the first few days of October. I think it's the 3rd through the 5th of October. And then we're going to be out in Sedona at Travis Walton's 50th anniversary of his UFO encounter. And that event is going to be October 17th through 20th. A lot of people know, I do believe it was November 5th when the incident actually happened. So 10 years ago, I had contacted Travis. And I said, for his 40th, they were actually in Snowflake where the incident happened. And I got Travis a satellite phone because the phones he said the phones won't come in there. So everyone was meeting at the event, and Alejandro Rojas was there. And I called him. I actually got through. So he had signal. And so I go, where, the show's starting here. Where's Travis? Is he there? He's always running late. So Travis shows up, and he forgot the satellite phone. It was expensive to rent that satellite phone for him. He forgot it. Luckily, the phone that Alejandro had on him was working, had enough signal, and we pulled it off. It worked. But this year, it's not going to be held in Snowflake. It's going to be in Sedona, which, if you've ever been there, if you have not been there, I should say, I say that it's a place to visit in the country. There's a lot of people that talk about unusual things that happen there, but other than that, it's such a beautiful area. So Ron James lives there. I'll be visiting with him and several others. But that's enough for me. I'm going to bring James Iandoli in right now. How did I do with your name, James?
Perfect.
Okay.
Iandoli. If you're super Italian, you can say Iandoli, but Iandoli is the way, right?
All right. So welcome to the show. So you actually do a show yourself called Engaging in the Phenomenon. As you can see, you have it right up here. So I know you had things happen in your life. Is that what made you interested in actually starting your channel and all that, because of the things that happened? Or did you have an interest before things happened? I should ask you how young you were.
Right. Yeah. Well, first of all, it's an honor to be on your show. I've been watching your show for years, and I remember you had like Christopher Bledsoe on before he was like well known. And you did.
Yeah, I had him back in the 2012. I had him on my show.
Right when I think it was around the time that show aired, but people still weren't picking up on his stuff back then. But for me, I guess you can call me an experiencer. I don't so much like labels, and to say, so, this person's an experiencer, this other person's a non-experiencer. We're human beings, and some people just happen to be tuned into a particular, their aperture might be more open, or something instigates an event. But for me, I was having high-strangeness events since I was young. So, for me, it started off with entity encounters, and those entities, I don't generally assume, or even back then, I never associated them with like a UFO intelligence per se, because they were shadow type entities, but they had a light scintillation to them, but they were highly telepathic. And if it happened more than a half dozen times, it was frightening. When I was young, I was awake and lucid and scared, to be honest. And I had out-of-body experiences. And that was when I was very young. So, going on from there, I had periodic UFO sightings when I was a kid outside. I was fascinated by them, and so I was always interested in UFOs and metaphysics. I never found it to be something strange. There was always something fascinating, and coincidentally, I live right in the Hudson Valley, where the Hudson Valley UFO wave occurred, and I was born during the Hudson Valley UFO wave. If that's any consolation.
Well, have you ever checked to see if you're a hybrid or not? Just
I Harry Nolan, if he'll run the DNA test, then
Yeah.
even if you got the results, it'd be classified.
Hey, I got to tell you,
There's a good guy.
when I was out in I was at Pine Bush, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 years ago, I talked to someone who now lives in Las Vegas, but her and her family lived in, the Pine Bush area.
Mhm.
And so I started talking to the daughter. This is a woman who ran my Facebook page for 7 or 8 years. Every day she'd post them. She was really very helpful. And by the way, that job's available. It's a volunteer basis in particular. But so she was posting all the time. And so I got to talking to her, because I remembered she said she was in Pine Bush. And I said, anything weird happened? She goes, let me get my daughter. So her daughter gets on the phone, and she said that they were outside in chairs, like lawn chairs and things like that. And there was like this high grass around this area where there was like a dirt area to park in. And so she's like walking, and she says, and this sounds nuts to people when you say this, but she said there was a being just like staring at her, and the big eyes, like the typical gray, it sounded like, and then it just vanished in the grass and scared the heck out of her. But it seems like an area where there's a lot of things that happen.
Yeah, and there's a lot over here. Whether it's like people say it's a vortex center area, but also right. I don't want to dox myself, but I live very close to Indian Point. So the UFOs and nukes thing is it's nuclear powered. So and you got Camp Smith right over here in West Point. So there's a lot over here.
Right. And a lot. And but the stories were that they would just people would just gather in their beach chairs and just wait for them to come. I mean, that's how often they happen. During the summer, cars would pull over the side of the road, and they would just get their lawn chairs out, just sit there and wait.
Yeah, and there's the Pine Bush is kind of like an infamous area. The whole Hudson Valley, really, because even growing up, there's plenty of people who I spoke to about my interest in UFOs. I'd ask them, and a majority of people around here, even still today, either themselves personally or family members and people they knew closely saw the UFO, the Hudson Valley UFO, during that time in the 80s.
Right. So let's talk a little bit more about what your experiences were. You said there were entities. Now, how young were you when these things started happening?
So that started when I was around 5 or 6. That age frame, and again, it was the first time that it ever happened. I had seen them, and I was scared. And the first thing I heard, again telepathically, was "He can see us," and that freaked me out. And then the being, there was 3 of them. They collapsed into like an orbs and came together. And if you ever saw the movie The Knowing with Nicolas Cage, I know
yes, I did.
Yeah. So that's
quite a movie.
Yeah. So and whoever made that movie, I don't know if they did research or what, or if they just made it up. But the whispering, that phenomena where the kids are hearing the whispering, it, like auditorially, I heard something akin to that, very similar to that, except mentally, I heard and felt differently. Like it was very clear, like no question in my mind what the message was. So, when people talk about telepathy, it's not just an auditory phenomenon. There's physical or even like emotional kinesthetic components to it. So, yeah. So, and again, that happened more than a half dozen times, spontaneously or periodically, until about the time I was maybe 11 or 12, was the last time it happened. So again, by that age, there was no confusion when I was that age of what's going on.
Now, did you try to tell your parents about it?
I didn't. Maybe the first time, but never. I never made it an issue with them, right? So because again, when I was younger, I was more frightened by it, and I probably had mentioned it to them, but I don't recall having like a whole conversation with them about it.
And did you ever talk to them later in life about any of this stuff? Or any of your family?
Yeah, well, yeah. After that's kind of jumping ahead a little, because I started having kind of in your face experiences by the time of 2007, and at that point I was 20 years old, and I had brought it up because of these later experiences. So yeah, later on I ended up bringing.
All right. Well, let's go back to doing it chronologically. How things happened with you, if you would.
Sure. So those original encounters, if you want to call them experiences, those entities, I even still to this day, I don't necessarily think that they were UFO beings or occupants. It didn't, because even after later on when I had UFO encounters, there was a telepathic component, but it was a completely different experience. So, from there, I don't know why I had the experiences necessarily, but for some reason I had those entity encounters, but then I also had spontaneous out of body experiences where I would be in between being awake and falling asleep, and there was no lapse in my consciousness. I was just, like staring at the ceiling basically, and all of a sudden my perspective shifts and I'm looking down at myself, and then all of a sudden I'm like, holy crap, that's me. And then, bam, I go back into my body, and it wasn't even just like an instantaneous thing. I saw myself going back down. And that happened a number of times spontaneously. But going on from there, I had UFO sightings when I was younger. But for me, it wasn't, I mean, at that age, it wasn't like this. It was exciting, but it wasn't like a paradigm shifting thing in the sense where like I would try to take pictures of them with disposable cameras. And they never came out, and it was always like, late at night. At that age, I couldn't really differentiate a satellite. I didn't have the kind of awareness or context when that was going on at that time. So I can't say for sure that those were UFOs, but in my mind, at least at that time, that I was thinking they were UFOs, and there were weird lights moving around in the sky, and I was following them, and they seemed to follow me. So that, after that, there was maybe a dropping off, and by the time I was 18 years old, and this is 2005, I started getting really involved in meditation. I was practicing Chinese martial arts, practicing Qigong, basic yoga and meditation, and I was practicing it pretty seriously. So and again, this whole time I was already interested in UFOs, and I was doing UFO research, reading books and such, and going on the internet. But then in 2007, that's when I had a series of really in-your-face experiences that kind of brought me where I am today. And that also, they seemed to happen sequentially, and there were aspects of high strangeness, and that all began in it was probably the late spring. And again, I'm 20 years old. I was working an overnight shift, and in the morning, I'm finishing up my shift, and one of my coworkers, who is, he's in his 50s or 60s, super conservative guy. Anything we talk about is like work related. He's telling me about the union there and the union rules and this and that, because he's a delegate. And, hey, how's your family? That kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So all of a sudden, like one morning, he says to me, "Hey, did you hear about the UFOs in Mexico?" And that it caught me off guard, because he didn't know that I had any kind of interest in that. I never had brought anything up like that at work or anything. So I found it strange, but I said, no, I didn't hear about it. And I really didn't. So I just kind of went on with the rest of my shift and finished. I thought it was weird, but I didn't think anything of it afterwards, because, I thought it was just a random question. Like maybe there was some kind of thing in the news or something. So I went home, and I went to sleep. So I went to sleep. By the time I got home and went to sleep, it's probably like 8:30 a.m. And when I went to sleep, I became aware in a dream, right? So it's a dream, but I was aware in the dream. And in the dream, I'm in my old neighborhood where I had actually seen those UFOs. And I was driving down in my old neighborhood. And there was again, this is a dream. There's an orange plasma electric UFO, like 20, 25 feet above my car. And and I'm driving, and I'm like panicking. It was kind of like, again, it's a dream. So I'm like super reactive. I didn't think why, but I'm like, oh my God, I have to get away from this thing. So I'm in, this is going on for 2.5 minutes of me driving through my old neighborhood, trying to get away from this orange plasma like UFO the UFO was like pulsing, and I felt the same pulsing in my body. But I snap out of that dream, and I wake up, and I'm just coming to, like, I'm not really thinking much about the dream other than that was kind of weird. But then one of my family members comes in my house, and they say, "Hey, did you hear about the UFOs in Mexico?" And that's when I was like, that's when everything kind of clicked for me, right? Because I wasn't connecting any of this until that point. So at that point, I was just like, what the hell is going on? So I'm kind of thinking to myself, like, screw this. I'm just going to go down the street to this Chinese place that I used to go to, get some chicken and broccoli, and just like chill, because this is freaking weird now. So I get it's like 3:30 in the afternoon or so, again, late spring. It's a clear blue sky. I get in my car and I start driving, and within a few hundred feet, I can see the road and the sky above me, and I see a fireball right in the center of the sky. And it had a very like lava living quality to it. If I can say that, or maybe like in the dream plasma like. And I just think to myself, like, holy shit, that's a UFO. And as soon as I think that, it started to move through the sky, like slowly and silently. Right. And it was not quite the size of a dime, but large. So it was either big or probably or lower in proximity. So I'm like super excited at this point and kind of shocked. And I'm trying to chase it. And it just slowly moves out of view. And I was just like, I was blown away. Right. And the whole thing that was the kind of the most jarring to me, like at first it was the UFO. I was like, oh my God, I saw a UFO and it was in broad daylight. And it was like right there, and it responded to my thought. But after I kind of settled down, I was trying to make sense of how is it, seeing the UFO in broad daylight, like I can kind of rationalize that, right? Like people have UFO sightings, but what I could never understand, or what didn't settle with me was that, or, hit me like a ton of bricks, was like, how did this entire chain of events happen that led up to the sighting? That this one of my coworkers mentioned something to me. Then I have this, crazy dream in my old neighborhood where I had seen UFOs as a kid. And then another, my family member says something to me. And then I have a broad daylight UFO sighting. To me, that whole series and chain of events was way more absurd than the UFO in broad daylight itself, right? Because you can rationalize, oh, maybe there's some kind of unknown, like non-human intelligence or aliens visiting us, whatever. Like that's like a sci-fi idea, but the whole chain of events to me was way more bizarre. So at this point, my interest grew even more, of course. But the next kind of UFO encounter in this series of events happened maybe 2 months later. So probably early summer. And again, in 2007, I ended up getting into this car accident because I was working all these overnight shifts, and I was working 7 days a week actually at that time. I was working 2 jobs. And I got into a car accident, and I didn't realize this until much later, but it was actually in the same exact area where I had the UFO sighting. So I got in this car accident, and during this car accident, I have what I call a trauma-induced out-of-body experience. It kind of simulated like a near-death experience, but I always call it a trauma-induced out-of-body experience because I wasn't near death. But during the incident, I'll just explain it. I thought I had died basically, because the first thing that happens after the accident is that I'm face to face with what somebody can call like a light being, right? This like entity of light. And I hear this like crystalline angelic orchestra that is like heavenly. It had that total kind of vibe to it. And the light being or entity, when I had some kind of like knowing to myself that the entity or this being is not separate from me somehow. That's just like the knowing or the feeling I had in this experience. And I heard, and I went to CCD and all that, but I was not somebody who was like religious. Mm-hmm. In that sense, I was into consciousness and stuff, but I was not like a Christian or like I was like a Catholic technically, but I didn't go to church and whatnot at that point. But I heard the kind of message, or again, it was a whole feeling to it and everything. It said, God is all there is, ever was, and ever will be. And I had this weird transcendental experience from there, where I experienced time spherically with the past, the present, and the future simultaneously. And then from there, it's like my reality reset, and all of a sudden I'm in the air looking down at the accident. And it's hard to describe the series of events linearly. So I apologize for that. But at that point, I'm looking down at the accident. I see the car, and I'm thinking to myself, oh, so this is it, huh? Like I was conscious and aware, and I'm looking down at the accident outside of my body, apparently thinking that I had passed away. And, I'm, that's the thought that I had. And again, I was conscious just as I'm conscious now. And I was even had reflective thinking to think I had passed away. But I was totally cool with it. There was no sense of like mourning or regret or anything. I was just totally cool with it. It felt like everything was perfect. And after a few moments of that, just zoomed back in my body, and then I wake up and I'm in the ambulance, and I'm like, oh my God, like I'm actually alive. Right.
Wow.
Yeah. And so I went to the hospital. I stayed there for a day. They let me out the next day. And I was just grateful to be alive. Like I was really considering at that point, like, wow, I could not be here right now. Right. I was just super grateful to be alive. And I'm like, it felt like a miracle to be in this existence, basically, like to be alive and to be a human and to be, somewhat fortunate, I guess. And after that trauma-induced out-of-body experience, and I don't know if it's because I hit my head in the car accident or what, but I felt physically different. Like people talk about like high vibrations and all that. Like I had a energetic buzzing in my body that was like elating, right? It was like super positive. And and again, I'm also feeling these like the feelings of gratefulness and whatnot. So later on that evening, this is the day after the accident, I'm just in my room, cleaning my room, just grateful to be alive. I'm just like thinking like, oh, like just so happy and grateful to be doing like these menial tasks, right? The most simplest things is like the greatest miracle. And as I'm contemplating that, all of a sudden I get what I would call a telepathic lock on of it's, there's like a voice, but a feeling and a visual overlay of these two Nordic entities. They said, like, come outside, but it's the moment that connection was made, it was like our consciousnesses were melded together or something. I knew what was going to happen. Again, my eyes were open and I'm looking in my room, but there was this simultaneous overlay in my conscious awareness of these two entities. And I got a whole download, and it's really hard to describe this linearly because everything is happening simultaneously. Where I'm receiving this download, I have this this telepathic lock on with these non-human intelligences, and they, I at least felt that I could feel what they were feeling and whatnot. And like our consciousnesses were merged, and there was no there's no question in what they were communicating, at least in the experience. So as soon as I heard and again, there was a physical feeling sensation to this whole thing. Like people talk about like a Kundalini experience or Kundalini awakening. I was already buzzing from after I had the trauma-induced OBE, but this whole thing was like a reactivation that like multiplied it 10 times over of like energy and Kundalini and that kind of thing throughout my body. But as soon as I heard and I felt this telepathic lock on, I started going right outside. And I get outside and there's some tree coverage. So I'm walking over, through so I can look up into the sky. And before I can even look into the sky, I hear like a low bassy hum. It's like boom, boom. And when it's making that kind of bass, I feel it through my body. And as soon as I make it through and I can look up into the sky, I see what looks like a hexagonal craft that it had lights, multicolor lights all around the edges, like bleeding around the edges. And there was like a perfectly white square light fixture in the center. And it looked like a metal craft that was very like dark metal gray, a very dark gray metal. And it was just slowly moving. And at this point, I'm just like, I'm kind of blown away because, again, I said there's this download going on where I'm getting what I can call impressions or communication from these entities where they're communicating that they are related to us somehow, and that they're here with basically good intentions and they want people to know about them. Which I'll caveat a little bit later on and say I don't know it. If I'm interpreting that, if they're manipulating my perception somehow, or if it's completely genuine. During this experience, it felt very genuine, and I was taking it at face value. So there's some stairs down there. I went down the stairs to get into my driveway so I can have a better view of the sky. And I get in my driveway, and this thing's just still gliding over. And as I'm watching it, it instantaneously dematerializes or disappears and then reappears, maybe 1,000 feet away over this man-made lake that was across the street from my house at the time. And when it reappeared over there, I saw that there were two other crafts that were exactly like identical to it, with the lights going around it, and they're just like moving around slowly in the sky. And again, I have this download thing going on this entire time, and this energetic thing. And at this point, I'm really thinking, like, did I hit my head so hard in that accident that I'm imagining this? Because this is just freaking this is insane. So I was like, somebody has to see this, right? So I ran into my house, and I had two family members there, and I said, guys, you got to come outside. And they said, why? And I said, they're here. They said, who's here? I said, just come outside. And they come outside, and they come out into the driveway with me, and they see these three crafts. And for like 20 minutes, there's this display of sorts they're slowly moving around, and one of them would disappear and then reappear over here. And again, the lights are going around, and, we're all just shocked, right? And in my mind, I'm thinking, like, this is going to be all over the news. This is like, people are going to know about at the time, I'm thinking extraterrestrials. Like, people are going to know about the reality of like aliens or extraterrestrials or visiting us, and this is it. I didn't have the term in 2007 so much, but I'm like, this is just like disclosure, right? This is it. And, apparently not, the next day there was no kind of announcement of that, but the whole way that this kind of demonstration or incident or event ended was that one of them disappeared, and then there's two of these UFOs with the lights going around them, and they're starting to head towards each other. And I'm like, holy crap. I was like, they're going to crash. And as soon as they made contact, they just both vanished, and that was it. And it was over. And I was like shocked, basically.
Can you hold just 1 second? Because I've heard the exact story from a gentleman named Albert Wayne. Now, Albert Wayne had an amazing UFO encounter when he was on his way to New York City from Connecticut. But he told me about being young, not real young, but, I guess perhaps preteen, I'm not really sure, sitting on a porch with his parents and his uncle. And they saw these two UAP like coming right after, and they were UFOs or whatever, and they're coming right at each other. And just like you're explaining, and exactly the same thing happened.
Yeah. And that, I mean, I was shocked. And I actually have another friend who I ended up doing CE5 with. He's an experiencer. He saw something exactly the same. I don't know why that is, but again, in my mind, I'm thinking that they're going to crash. Like I was thinking in my head, holy shit, they're going to crash.
That's just what he said. Yeah.
Yeah. And as soon as they made contact, they just both vanished. That's it. So those series of events, and again, I was having this download or telepathic lock on and communication.
Can you explain? Sorry. Can you explain what you mean? Are you explaining by saying it felt like a telepathic communication, or what do you consider a download would be?
Right. I mean, what's the difference? I say download because it's not just like you hear a voice and you say, like a voice in your head just says like hello, or even come outside. There was emotion and all I guess again the communication. There was like I guess the mystic Rudolf Steiner or somebody had called it a packed thought form. So there's just like way more to it than that. It's like I say a download because it's like a ton of there's this whole communication about how they're related to us. And again, that they're here with good intentions. They want people to know about them. Again, it's really hard to explain. And there was this feeling of compassion and like a familial kind of connection in the whole thing, right? It was a non-verbal, non-auditory, kinesthetic, emotional communication, right? Like if I'm talking to you right now, you can hear what I'm saying. That's like one layer of communication. There were several layers of communication going on here that seemed like a million times superior to verbal language. It seemed so direct, but it also seemed natural, right? If you've ever heard the telepathy tapes, the way that they describe telepathy in in different episodes of the telepathy tapes is exactly what I had experienced with non-human intelligence, right? It's not just an auditory message.
Okay. All right.
So that's when I say download, that's kind of what I'm trying to relay, but it's unless you've experienced it, it's really hard to put into words. The best way I can say it is there's again, these several layers to the communication it's not just auditory, right? There's like emotion and as if like there's like an entire concept that's just downloaded into you.
Now, do you happen to have any siblings? Are you an only child? Do you have siblings?
I have two siblings.
Do they ever experience any of what you're experiencing at all? If you don't mind me asking. Yeah.
So one of them was there for this event and events that happened afterwards. So they've seen this. One of my siblings is I'll just call them an intuitive. This is one of my sisters. But the other one, she doesn't really. So we're all different. But again, that they've been there they were there. Well, one of them was there for this event and for other events that happened afterwards.
And how about had anyone of your siblings felt as though that they actually had some type of communication, or was it just witnessing the event itself?
For them, it was just witnessing it. I found out after this event occurred because obviously we were talking about it that my mom had a UFO sighting in Queens in the 1970s, in the late 70s. So I, again, I didn't know that my whole life until after this event had occurred, and she had told me that because we were talking about the event.
Did she explain what her sighting was like?
She said it was a red UFO in Queens. It was just like a red orb, and she was familiar with the air traffic because she lived in Queens, so she would see planes every day, right, low and stuff. And she said this was completely different, and it was a red orb, and her friend and her cousin were there, and they were all kind of spooked by it, right? They were fascinated, but it was kind of like maybe because it was the time, the era in the 70s, but they seemed I don't want to say scared, but a little cautious about it. But that was it.
Interesting. So, why would you suppose so many things seem to happen to you? I mean, it seems like you've had a lot happen.
Right. And, this gets a little bit to, I guess, what was, Ray Hernandez and Ed Mitchell, and had the free, the Foundation for Research into Extraordinary Experiences. They did a study. I know people say it's flawed, and I understand that it's not perfect, but it is an example and an effort of what kind of research should be done. Is that it's alarming that it's somebody has a UFO sighting is one thing, and that's like pretty amazing, but a number of people who have UFO sightings also happen to have a near-death experience, right, and also end up having some kind of like poltergeist or psi experience. So my own impression is that after having one of these experiences, whichever one it is, your aperture opens, right? Whether it's an out-of-body experience, or a near-death experience or UFO encounter. I think that once you have one of these kind of experiences, that your aperture into what you can consider subtle reality opens, right? And just knowing or having an open mind to it, I think is more likely for it to happen. For me personally, I mean, I can't say why it happened to me. I mean, that's one of the questions that drove me to really try to figure out what's going on, is because I don't necessarily know exactly why. But I didn't know until after doing research that it's common for individuals who have a UFO encounter or an NDE or something akin to that have the other experiences.
So just I want to thank everyone in chat, and this Dr. Nonigan, you can be a little kinder to other people in there. Otherwise, I'm going to bump you out, just to let you know. So here's a question for you here. Are you able to explain what protocol is for yourself when you try to make contact, since it can be so different between person and to person?
Yeah. And, after those series of events that occurred, I got really into CE5, and people will know the CE5 protocol is one thing. That's a whole, I mean, maybe that's a whole nother podcast, really, because I ended up going out with CSETI and Dr. Stephen Greer, learning that, and using what's called the CE5 protocols. But after, I think anybody that goes out to do contact work will eventually, if they experiment enough, they're going to come to their own practice or what works for them. For me, there's a practice in Buddhism called metta, or even what the Heart Math Institute calls heart rate variability, where you're getting into like a state of gratitude, and from that state of gratitude and openness, setting the intention to have an interaction with UFOs or non-human intelligence, and you can use a visualization that goes along with that of a UFO or your perceived image of non-human intelligence and inviting them for an encounter. That's like a simplistic thing that works for me very good. But
I was my producer, Better Half, and I were with the Tedesco brothers out on Long Island, and they had all their equipment set up. And then I was with Dr. Kevin Taylor too. He was there as well, and we were all down on the beach. We were sitting in all these chairs, and you could see way out into the ocean. Had nice view of the sky and everything. And I actually tried like the meditation or whatever it was, inviting, and so did Donna. We're both sitting there just trying something, come on in. And all of a sudden I thought something happened. Ended up being a boat way out there. But the day after, so there was 2 days, that was a Friday, and the Saturday they got all kinds of footage of, things that were very, very interesting. I'll put it at that. And there's going to be some interesting news about the Tedesco brothers that's going to be coming out, which is, I'm really happy for them. And I can't even tease it because I was sworn to secrecy, but I can just say that the government is, I'll put it this way, to give a little bit of it, the government is thankful that they're doing what they're doing, which is great.
Yeah, I might have been invited out to that event because I'm over here in New York, and there's an individual who said, "Do you want to come out with them?" And my work schedule, I wasn't able to do it, but I'm excited to hear about that when that comes out, and hopefully actually have them on engage in the phenomenon sometime, because that's incredible.
Yep. They're very willing to be on shows. So sure, I can actually make that connection with you. Here's another question for you. Do you think that UAPs and supposed aliens are what is described as angels and demons, not aliens visiting the Earth, tricking humanity into giving up our souls? That's an interesting comment.
Yeah. So since I've had a variety of experiences, and what I explained here, we have a short time, is like scratching the surface. I've had many other experiences, including with the CE5 and other stuff. And so I do have a bit of an informed opinion on this. And I'll say that I don't think it's just one thing. I don't think, all the accounts of angels are what we consider nowadays as extraterrestrials or non-human intelligence. I do think there are a variety of beings, right? As to, Dr. Diana Pasulka and even Carl Nell and Timothy Taylor and American Cosmic were talking about our hierarchy of beings. I think that framework for hierarchy of beings is simplistic, but informal in the sense it gives people an idea that there's a variety of intelligences, and we're probably somewhere in the middle, right?
I wouldn't know if we're that high, but yes.
I know what you mean, but I mean, if we're considering also like microbial life and
and
cellular, we're
Yeah.
kind of like in like Eastern traditions, they actually say it's extremely fortunate to be a human because we experience just the right amount of suffering that we want to ascend to a higher level of intelligence. Whereas if you're in the angelic realm, there's no desire to move up. You're in a more blissful reality.
I think we're just above the amoeba, really. That's how I feel sometimes.
Yeah.
By the way we treat each other. But
true. It's true. I know.
So how many years have you run your show?
So engaging the phenomenon, I created my channel in like 2018. I started doing formal interviews in 2021. But I mean, I was talking with like Richard Dolan back in like 2009, 2010. And even back then I was interviewing people, but I was doing it privately. I was doing private interviews and meeting with experiencers and CE5 field workers. And I did that for many years and pretty intensely. I didn't have kids then, and I didn't have, my job wasn't as involved, and I worked closer to home. So I was basically doing this stuff like pretty hardcore back then. And so I started my show kind of late on, but by that point I was already pretty heavily involved.
All right, so we get about 5 minutes, but I want to go back to your. I believe you said it seemed to be a hexagonal shape craft, and then there was two other identical ones. Can we go back to that sighting, and if you could just tell me approximately where was that in compared to where you live? Was that in
Wh-
New York, in the
yes,
Hudson? Yeah.
yes, yeah.
And were there, besides the people that witnessed it with you, do you know of other people reporting it or?
No,
Uh,
I was looking because we have a local paper over here, and I was looking in it like every week, and it never
yeah,
came up, and there was never anything on like Channel 12 News about it. Uh, so I don't know if anybody else had seen it, but during the experience in my mind, I thought that everybody was seeing this stuff,
yeah.
that event. I didn't even think twice about it because it was so obvious.
Hmm.
So yeah, the I say hexagonal, but I also want to clarify the edges were rounded.
Hmm.
So it's, there were flat kind of edges to it, but there was never like a sharp edge. It was all that, like, they were like this, but it was rounded, like, it looked like a disc, right? That's the way, like a wedge, or however you want to say it, but the edges were rounded, not sharp.
Hmm. And how about sound? Did you hear any sound from them at all?
At the very beginning, because the one that was above me, it was right above the trees, and it was less than 120 feet in the air at that
Hmm.
point, and it had a low bass hum. And again,
Hmm.
when it had that bassy hum, it was like vroom, 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 like that. I I felt it reverberating through my body. But once it dematerialized and went 1,000 feet away, there was no, you couldn't hear it.
You didn't feel anything, did you? Any type of pressure of any kind or
I
that
felt
you remember?
vibrations through my body, and again, it
Hmm.
was a whole Kundalini energetic thing, but also like when it was that close, I felt the pulsing in my body.
Hmm. Yeah, there was someone on the show recently that said that they had a telecommunication from some entity of some kind, and they felt it like it wasn't like in the mind. He said it was more like in here. And
I felt it throughout my
mm,
entire body. And that's what I was trying to explain about the telepathy. It's not just an auditory thing. It You can feel it emotionally. You can feel it physically in your body, but also like your field, if I can say that.
mm. And were the trees? That's a good question. Were the trees moving at all?
I didn't see them move, but my eyes were not really looking at the trees. My focus and attention was on the object. So
Yeah,
I didn't
sure, I understand. Yeah,
I don't recollect hearing the trees moving from the craft or anything, but I really don't know, because I was just I was really, like, all my attention was on the object.
right. And I totally get that. And what year would you say this was?
This was 2007.
2007. So that's the same year I had my sighting, by the way.
Yeah.
Mine was more toward the fall. It's the strangest thing. Most people know exactly the date and everything, and I think mine was either in October or November, but I'm not positive.
Yeah.
And so I wish I had the exact date, but I did look it up through MUFON to see if there was any sightings in that area, and there was in November. But they thought they saw more of a like a cigar shaped situation. But I've also heard people say that a disc at a distance looks like a cigar. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Perhaps it
Yeah.
was the same sighting. It would be awful hard to tell at this point.
Right.
Did you, since you had like an interest at that time, did you consider reporting it?
I I didn't consider reporting it. I first I I'm maybe it's my generation as a millennial, but I just like my thing about like authority organizations and stuff is I'm not my pathway. Even um I, for better or worse, and this is not to knock anybody, but I was never into MUFON per se.
Mm-hmm.
Just again, maybe it's a generational thing, but my thinking about like, big organizations like that is never like, and it didn't appeal to me.
Yeah, I understand. Okay. All right. Well, hey, thanks so much. So your YouTube channel is Engaging the Phenomenon, and it's linked down in the show notes below and in the text below. So I want to thank you so much for coming on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me again. Podcast UFO is legendary amongst the UFO research crowd.
Oh, thanks so much. That's very nice of you to say. All right, you take care now, and hopefully we'll see you in Pine Bush one year.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
I'm like an hour away.
Yeah. All right. Take care.
See ya.
All right, everyone. So next Tuesday, it's going to be myself, UFO Jack. I'm pretty sure he's going to be there, and Peter Robbins, and possibly another guest talking about the Exeter UFO incident. And the following Thursday is going to be Gene and Natalia Sticko. They're going to be talking about Soviet documents related to UFOs, and it's going to be an interesting show. So thank you so much. And remember to keep your eyes to the